Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here. So today we have these stasis builds for y'all. We have, now keep in mind with stasis and shred specifically, there's not going to be a new versus old here necessarily. There's going to be an older and a newer. However with stasis, because stasis has received a lot of changes recently, this is going to be some more of more of a older style in relation to loot used. So that's just something to keep in mind here. Now for our first build, we're going to be using Elithinum and Blast Wave Striders. Blast Wave Striders did get changed. Now you might be asking yourself, why isn't this a new setup? It's because Blast Wave Striders is an older exotic. If I remember correctly, it came out with Final Shape. It came out sometime after Final Shape. I can't remember quite. I believe it was episode Revenant was when it came out. But it has been a little bit of time. Same with Elithinum. Elithinum is, again, a little bit on the older side. Meanwhile, our other Stasis setup uses a... It does use an older exotic, but it uses newer weapons. So that's something to keep in mind here. And again, this is, episode Revenant, this is even older. So that's the only reason why this is why I'm classifying this as an older setup. And I have made a video on Blast Wave Striders before. It was a Frozone build, so if y'all have not checked that, it's not going to be in with the playlist, but it is going to be somewhere on the channel. Now, if you'll want to go check out my Solar, Arc, and Void builds, they are in the go ahead and hit the playlist tab. That is in the build playlist. That's also where Strand will be when that gets uploaded. Now, first off, I'm gonna let y'all peep the fashion. As the fashion, helmet comes from Christmas. Arms and chest, I don't remember, but they might also come from Christmas. The legs, I'm using of course, the Path of the Burning Steps, and then the mark is from something else. But this was kind of this was a look I slapped together quite a bit ago, but I mean, still pretty solid, Now let's get into the subclass first. Now keep in mind, a lot of the stuff between the two builds in terms of subclass, aspect, fragments, that sort of thing, it's not going to be changing that much. But we are using, of course, we only have one Stasis Super, we only have one Stasis Melee, and when you're a Titan, there really is only one grenade to use, that being Glacier Grenade. If you're Hunter, you have a little bit more options. If you're Warlock, you're pretty much going to be exclusively using Cold Snap Grenade. So that's just something to keep in mind, because we never got any new grenades or melees or supers for a Stasis, and we never will, unfortunately. We're using Rally Barricade. It's just not that important. Barricade is not that important for this build. Our aspects we're using is Tectonic Harvest. This is necessary. And we're using Howl of the Storm. This is also necessary because this is going to be a Stasis consecration in a way. So we're just think about it like that. And we do get an additional melee charge. The additional melee charge is going to be quite important. Now, in terms of fragments, we do have Whisper of Fissures. Increase the damage and size of the burst of stasis. When you destroy a stasis crystal or defeat a frozen target. Titan is all about destroying stasis crystals, so Whisper of Fissures is necessary. Then Frost Armor having increased duration and maximum stat count, it's just helpful. Frost Armor gives you a stacking damage. It gives you stacking damage resistance. It doesn't heal you necessarily. Now, the reason why I have Stasis Shards tracked to your position is mainly because of that extra super stat. Mainly because of that stat specifically. And then we are using Whisper of Rending. Primary ammo weapons do increased damage to stasis crystals and frozen targets. That makes it, because Elithinum is primary ammo, that makes it to where Elithinum guarantees just one-shots all of them. At least as many as possible. Now getting into here, we're using the Slayer Baron Apothecary Satchel because Grenade Launcher is here and Stasis is here. Now, first off, Rapid Stasis Weapon hits grants you a stack of Frost Armor, hits against the load or frozen targets, also create a Stasis Shard. Again, my Generate Stasis Shards is also as intrinsic to Stasis as well. That's something to keep in mind, but it's more so a helpful tool than anything else. However, Crystalline Converter, after activating your class ability, your next Stasis Weapon Final Ability creates a Stasis Shard. That first part is useless. We don't use our class ability. And again, we can generate Stasis Shards easily. Now, gather stasis shards to gain stacks of crystalline converter, which causes your next powered stasis melee hit to create stasis crystals equal to the number of stacks you have. Again, that buffs our stasis melee that much more. Now, we can clear while using a grenade launcher. It weakens. That does affect Lithium. And Lithium does do damage over time, so that's something good. Hail the Storm. Shattering frozen targets and stasis crystals deal increased damage. Not the most important part of that perk, because we have Whisper of Fissures, remember. However, shattering stasis crystals release shards of ice that damage and slows targets, so it spreads it out more. That's the important part of that one. Then, while you have Frost Armor taking critical damage, releases a burst that freezes nearby commands and grants Frost Armor to your nearby allies. That's not that important here, it's just more so a thing of it stops you from getting one-shot when you're at critical health, which is very helpful. Then, the kinetic dealing sustained damage with a grenade launcher. Keep in mind, Lithium does damage over time. Increases the reload speed of grenade launchers. It triggers damaging kinetic shockwave, which can stun unstop. This makes a Lithium not. It deals with unstops very, very effectively. Now the other one here is Frozen. Okay, sorry, my mouse is a little bit finicky. Frozen combatants become surrounded by chilling fog, which slows combatants that aren't already, so that they cluster together. Now, some of the other ones you can swap that out with. Picking up a Stasis Shark against your class ability energy is completely useless. You're not going to be using that. Your Arc and Void abilities deal bonus damage to targets that are affected by Stasis debuff. That is useless outside of Prismatic, because again, we're not using Arc or Void abilities, so unfortunately this is the best one in here. But again, this is a super potent setup. Now Lithium. It has Vestigial Alchemy. I'm not gonna read all of this, but basically little sprites will come towards you, and it'll fill up a bar at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, as you'll see in the gameplay. And what this does is it'll fill up. There's a bar in the middle, so there's phase 1 and then phase 2 of the bar. If you hold a special reload at phase 1, this little symbol here will glow green. When you shoot it, it'll spawn special ammo. At 2 bars, you hit reload again, so you have to hit it twice. Where this symbol appears purple, you shoot it, it will spawn heavy ammo right where you have shot it at. But, like I said, it does damage over time, that sort of thing. While it is in bigger enemies, it will continually generate those little things towards you. Now this one, a Lithium Catalyst, hitting 3 separate targets, increase the damage for amount of duration. It's one for all. It is pretty solid. The catalyst, I don't think the Catalyst is necessary for this build, but it is quite good. Now, we're using our Sovereignty for our anti-barrier, because again, anti-barrier is super helpful, and again, you have to run an anti-barrier weapon. Unless, of course, you're doing activity that doesn't have barrier. But here we have, again, cannot tier this weapon, you can only level it up, which kind of sucks. But this part doesn't matter, but we have Explode Payload and Withering Gaze, so that, we weaken it when we honed in for a little bit. So I have 2 sources of weaken, a Lithium and then Sovereignty, a Sniper. Now we're using the Slammer. I know in a previous video, if you have seen some of my other build videos, might have been like Eager Edge feels required. This one for this build is especially required. One, it does deal with overloads, but Stasis can deal with overloads natively. However, as you'll kind of see with the way Blast Wave Striders work, it will launch you backwards, sometimes off the map. So it's helpful to be able to sword swipe back into the action. So in that respect, it's helpful. But also there is some fun little movement stuff you can do with the Lithium and the Slammer, so I will be showcasing some of that as well, even though I'm not necessarily that good at it. And now let's go into the armor here. So for stats, your grenade, again, your grenade doesn't necessarily need to be that high, but again, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it because I have not grinded out a different set of this. Realistically, your super doesn't need to be higher than 70. Your class can be low as possible. Your health can be as low as possible. Your melee, which is why we have a melee fought here, melee should be as high as you can get it. And then your weapon should be absolute highest, and then your melee. So realistically, if you want an armor archetype, I recommend Paragon Armor for this instead of, well, actually, I recommend Skirmisher Armor. Skirmisher Armor is the one I recommend using. So there is that for y'all. However, this is the best I can make work. Now, the set bonus you're using is Thriving Survivor. Final blows with grenades. Again, we're using primary ammo weapons, so it's going to grant our Lithium extra stability and reload speed. Keep in mind the stasis crystals, their damage is counted from their source. So for instance, the any crystal spawned by the melee, as you'll see, they count as melee damage. The glacier grenade, any enemies killed by that explosion, count as grenade kills. Now, multiple final blows with primary ammo weapons grant bonuses to weapon and grenade stats, and increased ammo generation for heat and primary ammo weapons. Ammo is not going to be an issue here. The reason why you want high weapon stat is for that extra damage for everything. Now let's get into the armor itself. So realistically, if you're in a team, heavy emote finder is really, really nice. However, because we don't need that, I would recommend running power preservation if you're in like a team situation. But again, you're not generating orbs for yourself. So either double up on super fonts, or if you are leaning in some stat or another, I would recommend Ashes to Assets or Hands On, depending on if you're like spamming grenades more often with this build, or realistically what you want to be doing, that being melee. But again, grenades melee is going to be feeding into each other. Charged up is necessary. Ammo generation, perfectly fine. Again, we are using Stasis Weapon Surge because we have 100. We have 100 weapon. That is why. Because again, reload damage. Damage caps out at 15%. There's no reason not to have 100 weapon stat. They were using recuperation. Stasis can struggle at times to survive. And then absolution, double time dilation to keep all of this stuff up longer. And powerful attraction isn't super necessary, but whenever you need cover. Now looking at Blast Wave Striders here. Gain resistance to your explosives. This is good. Because lithium won't really kill you. Defeat targets to charge this armor. Once charged, land a Shiver Strike and melee attack or deal explosive self-damage to rocket jump backwards and release a blast wave of deadly shrapnel projectiles. The way freezes commands and slows guardians. Charged rocket jumps grant frost armor. Here's the problem with this. It goes backwards. So to stop it from jumping backwards, that's why we have Eager Edge to swipe back in, right back to the action. Because it will activate on the slide up. There's some interesting stuff with here though. Now, it does say defeat targets to charge this armor. That is the way to do it when you're not using a Lithium. The Lithium and Blast Wave Strider does have an interaction to where the little orbs that Lithium spawns charges up Blast Wave Striders as well. So you don't have to just rely on kills, you can also rely on hits. However, on that note though, let's get into a lovely Empire hunt. Alright, so we are doing the Warrior on Master Difficulty. In Empire Hunt on Master Difficulty, we do have Chill Touch, Shocking Cascade, we will be doing Overloads and Barriers, but we can get Tier 5 armor from this. We do have Counterfeit here. I would advise not doing these threats. I would recommend trying your best to avoid having to do those. So that is something that I would heavily recommend try to avoid. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, we have no buffs here. Even though we do have some stasis related options, we will not be using or taking part in those actions in particular. Again, we are solo here. Because again, this build can hang decently well solo. So that's something to keep in mind.
Phylax found fame at Twilight Gap, yes. Fame for ruthlessness, for final deaths.
Something to keep in mind here, until this build gets going, you do want to kind of stay a little bit aback.
You have challenged Aramis Kell once before. Won't work my time.
And so here is, it'll auto detonate all of them. Again, station shards automatically, they give us melee energy. Yeah, we're trying to play this a little bit on the safer side. Oh my god! Overloads can be... This combo is a little bit of a pain in the ass. Top part is going to be that barrier. Okay, I don't know what happened there. And again, we have our Stasis Trooper here to help us out with everything. The Stasis Trooper does do quite a bit of damage. I will say again, we can't deal with barriers on our super, so... And the Blast Whip does do a lot of damage, so again, we insta-killed it. And just to show Lithium here, see, scope turns green, now it turns purple, heavy ammo right there. But again, we don't need it here. And something you can do here is if you jump just as you hit, it will send you flying. You can sort of try to skate like that. It's not a proper skate necessarily, but it gives you quite a lot of momentum, so. We're going right here. Beautiful. Insta-killed him. Where is he? There he is. Just keep in mind, armor charges are not exactly super duper easy to hold on to. Oh! I don't know how he perished there. I'm not completely sure how he perished there, but, you know, whatever you learn, I guess. I will say this build doesn't do a great job at generating orbs, necessarily. Killed him, which is great for us. Again, the Blaster Strider bar on the left is something that you really got to manage here. You do have to kind of be a little bit careful here. That was probably why I died. One spawned right on me, most likely. Woo! We're gonna take these out carefully now. And the sniper is your range sort of weapon. There we are. How did I not kill that one? And a lot of explosive shanks. Okay, now it should be safe to traverse. This is mainly just to prevent us from dying here. I don't remember having that one active. We'll generate us some special ammo here. Oh, okay. Like I said, y'all gotta watch that a little bit. Again, that crystalline converter there is the next time we get injured. Well, the next time we release a melee hit. So you'll kind of see here, we'll release quite a bit of stasis crystals. Woo-wee! As y'all can kind of see, beautiful, just absolutely nuking everything. Again, this thing does solid damage even without us doing anything. Beautiful. I got destruction. Absolute destruction. Again, that's just to generate us some ammo. Again, Eager Edge is not necessarily our main source of damage here. Elizabeth takes care of it all. And here we are. Oh, again. Alright, we gotta keep it frozen. There we are, got him. No, please let it have registered. This encounter is quite tough. It does require a little bit of concentration. Okay, it started us all the way back here. We're not doing that. But y'all see how the build works. We're not doing all that work again. Again, this build is definitely a lot better in more of a team situation. But again, in master content, this build does fall off mainly because of, as y'all can see, the damage just gets so high. And unfortunately, Stasis doesn't have a way to health regen effectively. Like Arc, of course, has knockout and that sort of thing. Of course, Blinding is a great ad control tool. But also you can play distance with Arc. With Solar, of course, you have Restoration, you have Cure. With Void, you have Overshield, all that. Even with Strand, you have Banner of the Big Boy and Banner of War himself. But with Stasis, all you have is damage resist. You have no way of healing, for the most part. But there is that build. Again, didn't get to the final boss, but y'all kind of see how the setup works and the execution of it. So on that note, though, we're going to go ahead and get into the next build here. Now, for the new build here, first off, let's go ahead and peep out the fashion here. I'm using Chatter White and some Outlaw stuff, but we're using the rest of the wolf set, which is interesting. But, you know, this is the fashion I put together a little hastily, but that's a-okay. Now, unfortunately with this build, our class is quite high, unfortunately, so there's not that much I can do about it. So just keep that in mind here. Alright, now you may have noticed my stats have changed. I'll get into those stats here in a minute. But there's certain things of roles that I don't have good rolls of, and that y'all can do a better job with than me. But, again, Super's the same, Melee's the same with this build, Grenade's the same. The only thing that's different here is Diamond Lance. We're using Diamond Lance as a whole. Now, keep in mind, when you throw the lance, it will freeze on impact. Now, the melee button, which for me is one of the buttons on the side of my mouse, slam the lance on the ground to freeze targets in a small area. It will also give you Frost Armor with the helmet that we were using. Now, the other stuff is the exact same as previous build. However, for our 5th fragment, we have damaging targets with a stasis. Melee reloads your weapons and grants you a temporary boost to weapon ready speed, which is quite nice. Is the reload that good necessarily? No, but I'm gonna have to be perfectly honest here. Most of these suck. Because Stasis Melee is pretty difficult to try to get a hold of. But yeah, most of these kind of suck. Though, which is kind of unfortunate. And some of the good ones we are already using here. So that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, there's not much we can do with that, but that's probably the best one here. Now, for our artifact, we're actually using Implement of Curiosity instead of the Slayer Baron one. Mainly because of some other ones. Granting allies and elemental buffs gives class ability energy. Again, this one is quite useless. But picking up an elemental pickup matching your subclass element, which is Stasis Shards in our case, grants energy to your least charged ability. And because, again, we're not really going to be using our barricade for this build, it's going to generate either stasis or either grenade or melee energy. And then here, Rapid Precision hits. Again, first part doesn't matter, but Rapid Precision hits with the stasis weapons grant Frost Armor. Again, this build is all about Frost Armor. We don't need Tectonic Harvest with this build. And that allows us to get that 5th fragment slot. Now for this slot, while you have Frost Armor taking critical damage, of course, releases a Freezing Burst, Frost Renewal. That was in the previous build. Now here, defeating a target has a chance to create an elemental pickup, matching your equipped super element. This is just more Stasis Shards, more Stasis Shards, more Stasis Shards. Now this one, while Frost Armor is active, Stasis Precision Final Blows causes the combatants to release a Freezing Burst. This will more so get into our actual combat thing here. But Frost Armor or melee recharges faster and deals increased damage. We are using Cryoclasm, so this thing's gonna go Howling Storm. This thing is going to go crazy. Now for the weapons here, we are using a heat weapon here, being the modified B7 pistol here. Now, as y'all can see, we have a lot of great rolls here. We do have cooling efficiency here as well. Air core, but we're using Rhyme Stealer. Destroying a stasis crystal or defeating a frozen target with this weapon grants you an improved amount of frost armor. It gives you 2 stacks of frost armor now. Keep in mind we max out at 7. And then we have Headstone here. Headstone is just honestly quite nice. Headstone is just a nice perk to have. We are using Cloud Strike because this is anti-barrier, and honestly, for a ranged weapon that you need to do damage at a distance, this thing kind of claps here. Rapid Precision hits, creates a lightning storm at the point of contact, and grants a stack of Bolt Charge. So this is how you can get Bolt Charge with this as well. Then Rapidly Landing Precision hits will return 1 to the magazine, triple tap. So yeah, Precision Final Blows generate a Lightning Bolt, you're in a moderate amount of Bolt Charge. But again, this is more so we're dealing damage sustained with this thing. Then of course we have the Slammer, more so for movement and stuff, and again, Overload. Even though it says we can't do Unstop, again, our thing is shattering stasis crystals and frozen targets. So that's how we're able to deal with Unstops here. Now do keep in mind, even though Stasis says slow, we generally don't really do slow, at least on Titan. Stasis Titan mainly shatters, doesn't necessarily slow. But I will say our heat weapon does do Overload as well. If you want a replacement weapon, you don't want Eager Edge, I would recommend, if you have it, the Ghost of the Deep rocket launcher is one of the only rocket launchers. I'm not sure if it still drops it, but only one rocket launcher in the entire game could drop Cluster Bomb in terms of stasis ones. The other one, I believe, is unobtainable. But on that note, though, we're going to go down here so y'all can, say the build. We will be doing Dark Priestess, if I remember correctly. Yes, Dark Priestess instead of Technocrat. Technocrat is just kind of a trial and a half to do. Again, with this one, we are going to do Master as well, just so y'all can see the comparison. Again, we are not going to be equipping any of these gold ones, but we will be doing Shock Cascade. We will be doing Counterfeit as well, and we will be doing Chill Touch as well. Again, this was just dangerous. But Chill Touch we can honestly handle quite well. So we're going to go ahead and get into the Dark Priestess on Master difficulty, and forgot there's Fashion. Fashion is still the same here. Now, keep in mind, this video should be releasing on Thursday, and keep in mind the final build video will be releasing on Saturday, and that will be the Strand build specifically. And that'll be the final builds that I will be releasing for Destiny 2. Again, I am not covering Prismatic Titan because Prismatic Titan 1 has not been around long at all, but 2, there's only one Prismatic base exotic. And that's the problem. So, that sometimes I won't be covering necessarily. Now, this Empire Hunt is on the easier side, but it's not exactly a walk in the park either. Yeah, and that gives us frost armor because of our helmet. Now, again, a lot of the rules that I said before, again, for the most part, oof, we got exploded. I will say, for some reason, specifically with Fallen, we do keep detonating for no reason, just getting completely nuked. There's not much about it. There's still some weird iffy things in the game that will probably never be fixed. But here's what I will say, this build is not as strong as... Oh my... Again, you have to get in close range. That is the biggest problem with Stasis Titan as a whole, is that you have to get in close range, and if the enemy does not let you get into close range, you're kind of fucked. So, yeah, I'm gonna just keep trying this here. Once we get past the intro thing, we'll be fine, but we're gonna come at this from a different angle. Like, just keep in mind, we cannot generate any sort of health. Kind of just have to wait that out. Again, our thing is not souped up. We might... Stasis crystals will... The Diamond Lance will detonate stasis crystals. But unlike with the lithium setup, we can get frost armor from quite a hefty distance. So yeah, this build is definitely more of a team-friendly build here, while Elithinum isn't so much because you need those stasis crystals. The likelihood of Warlock's going to be running stasis turrets is honestly quite high, so... Stasis Trooper is still very good, so that's what we're going to be taking advantage of here. Again, we kind of have no way of regenerating health. Finish! Again, there's not really, we can't regenerate any health whatsoever, so... That's the biggest problem with this build, is it just can't, we can't regenerate any sort of health. What we can do is a decent amount of damage. Okay. Again, we can get a high amount of damage resist. We just... This build is just a struggle with everything else. Being able to refreeze stuff is quite nice. We're gonna perish. That anti-barrier champ is in a rough spot. I'll say that. I'll be the first to say that. It is in a rough spot. Come on. Are you kidding me? There we are. Okay. I'm not going to spend too much time with this build necessarily. But it is a team build for sure. It is a team build for sure. This build that does not work very well. Uh, but here at the ends of these videos here, specifically for Stasis and Strand, I'm going to be giving general thoughts on their final states. Due to, I would define Stasis and Strand as unfinished subclasses. I would define these as unfinished as a whole. Because, again, they only have one super, they only have one melee, they did not get a new grenade option. Except, I believe Strand did get an extra... no, Strand and Stasis did get extra grenade options. However, both of them are not useful for Titan. Both of them are not useful for Titan. So, for those reasons, at the end of these, I'm going to be giving my final thoughts on the state of Stasis for this video. And for Strand, final thoughts on Strand will be, later on. Now, first off, y'all can kind of see here, Stasis as a whole just doesn't survive very well. It just doesn't. Because on Stasis, you can't heal. You just can't heal with Stasis. And healing is just so important in this game. It's just so important. And doing things like, well, Stasis final blows generate orbs of power. Well, we're shattering Stasis crystals. If you put on firepower, well, does it still work? And then, because you're shattering from so many different sources. Your weapon, melee, and grenade are all sources of your kills. So it's very expensive to try to build up orbs to generate that. But, again, we can generate those orbs very easily on other guardian classes. Like Arc, for instance, is very easy to because the feature of Arc is your weapon, not necessarily your abilities. And again, for the subs that I do like to use more ability-based stuff with, I'm using Armamentarium, and Armamentarium has firepower natively. So I don't have to, go out of my way to do that. And for Solar, Restoration, Cure, as I said before, for Void. Even though Void doesn't have, at least Void Titan, Overshield is just flat out better than the damage resist that Frost Armor offers, because Overshield is basically a second health bar that you can proc quite easily. Meanwhile, with Frost Armor, it's just a flat damage resist. That's it. And if you're constantly being hit, there's no way that's going to regen. In terms like your health is not going to regen as long as you're getting hit. Meanwhile, with Overshield, if you're in a bubble, for instance, or next to one that has, I would say, 14 or something like that, as you're getting hit, your Void Overshield is climbing back up instead of just staying stuck there. So that's kind of the difference here, which I don't think a ton of people really think about. Stasis would need some way to heal with the Stasis Shards. Stasis Shards, because back in the day, Stasis Shards granted a small amount of health when you pick them up. That needs to return. Desperately needs to return, or give a new perk that actually regenerates health. Call it something different, because even Void has Devour. And even on Titan, when you don't have good access to Devour, you have an aspect that regens health upon volatile hits and that sort of thing. So, and again, Overshield is just better than Frost Armor. So, in my opinion, that's where it struggles. However, I like where the Stasis Titan melee's at. I do. I like it where the Stasis Titan melee's at. I legitimately, I like where it's at. I do like the Stasis Titan, where the Stasis Titan Super's at. It does good damage. Again, the biggest issue here is it can't do with flying enemies. That is mainly an issue with bosses, because most bosses are either floating or flying, so it just can't handle a lot of them. This mainly goes for Vex. However, some of the times they will float down enough to get hit by at least a Stasis Super. However, again, not having another melee option and not having another super option mightily cripples this. And the only defensive thing that we can get for Stasis is Rhyme Stealer. Why not destroying a Stasis crystal or defeating a frozen target grants you a small piece of health or something like that. It's just, you all can see, as long as you're getting hit, the Frost Armor is useless. The Frost Armor is kind of useless. You do have more effective health. However, in Master difficulties and higher, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But this build is definitely very fun to use in terms of campaigns. You can definitely get through a legendary campaign with this armor, with this build as well. However, the battle is definitely going to go to the old build. The Lithium build is just flat out better. It just is flat out better. because you're destroying a lot of shit at the same time. Something that you're not necessarily doing for other things. But also, Lithium has more range, it does more damage. This build is just better. Now, something that I did neglect to mention about this setup in particular is the health stat is way too high. You do need more melee, more grenade. You don't necessarily need more super. Your super comes back quite often, but your weapon stat kind of does need to be a little bit higher as well. But if you want to go in the more ability side of things, the melee, the health is just way too high, same with class ability. But again, I am kind of shafted by Thriving Survivor armor set bonuses. Now, in other thoughts, Gauntlets is a great hunt. I know some of y'all be like, you have this armor set, why aren't you using it? Grenade Final Blows is kind of difficult to come by. Its best use case would be by Joe Hendry build with Armamentarium. However, it uses a heat weapon, and this armor set bonus is just better with heat weapons because I'm generating ammo with bonus stability, bonus reload speed, and a bonus to the grenade stat. So, and generally speaking, for solar, my grenades I generally don't use to kill. For void, right? We use bow, bushido, heals, right? The hand cannon grants extra grenade energy, heat weapons, and again, the heavy ammo is not the feature. And for strands, the reason why you will not see me use it for strand either is because grapple and shackle. Shackle doesn't kill very well, at least especially in higher end content. Its purpose is not to kill. Its purpose is to suspend. Meanwhile, grapple is for movement. So that's the unfortunate part about that armor set. Now for Sage for the strand setups, what I will say is, unfortunately, their armor set bonuses are going to be the exact same. They're not going to change that much because the armor set bonus is just so good with both setups. The main difference between the builds is going to be one is more so geared towards damage, and the other one is geared more towards, general fun, clearing through stuff. So that's just something to keep in mind here. But let me know what you think about the Stasis builds in the comments below. I personally prefer the Lithium setup. The Lithium setup is, honestly, in my opinion, a little bit more fun. But again, this was the setup that I was rocking for quite some time, especially through campaigns. You're pretty much unkillable, but again, they're a little bit on the weaker side. Master content and higher, you should not be using this setup. I'm going to tell you that right now. But again, not all these builds on this channel are necessarily useful. Most of them are kind of jokey and kind of random. Like, I would never suggest somebody running the Legend of Acreus prismatic build that I did a long time ago in a serious context, alright? So, even though that build was pretty good. But again, if you have a little bit more skill, more patience, make sure you can make this build work. And if you have better aim than I do, you can make this build work. Again, I have not used this gun weapon in quite some time, because I don't know where my time has been spent. Anyways, though, on that note, though, I do appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'll catch y'all on the flip side.